So this is just gonna be a video sharing about a health journey I had last year. I'll try not to make this video too long because it's like really hard to talk about, but I have two photos in my phone from when I was using a cane when I came out of the hospital after it. And I'll show the other photo here. This one was just in the car. Luckily we had a cane from when my grandpa left one here one time. This was long before he passed away last year, but yeah, that was me just holding it in the washroom. Obviously my hair is a lot shorter, so I look different. But yeah, that was from last April when I had a stroke. And what happened was I actually had some seizures, and my family witnessed me having the seizures. I don't actually remember having the seizures, but basically I had one seizure, and during it I was coughing up blood. So they waited a bit, but eventually they just called 911. And I do remember waking up from the first seizure and trying to walk around, and I was just really disoriented, and then I noticed it was really hard for me to walk. And after about like maybe 7 minutes, I went back to lay down again. And then after that, I just went unconscious. I didn't wake back up. Um, and all I remember after that point is the paramedics talking to me, but I was like I was like mostly unconscious, so I just remember them trying to get me to say what the date was, what my name was, and what month it was, what year it was, and I got all that stuff wrong. I was like 2 years off from the actual date. So I guess they just do that as protocol. But I don't remember being lifted, but apparently I ended up like on the floor on my comforter, and they had to drag me to the front door with the comforter and try to get me up onto the thing, their little portable bed thing that they take to the ambulance. They had to use my blanket to get me up. At the time I was 245 pounds, so I was more than what I weigh now, but that's still a very heavy weight. My brother told me recently, I asked him how many paramedics there were in total. Apparently there were two guys, and they were both kind of on the skinny side, and one girl who was just doing the vitals and stuff. But it was the guys who were doing the lifting, but they weren't very strong, and I'm very heavy set, so 245 pounds was a lot for them. But my brother said that they pulled my shoulder while they were they were pulling my arms from the top, and that's why to this day I still have like an injured shoulder. After I was discharged out of the hospital last year, they sent home basically a wheelchair, a thing for the tub that you put in the tub that you can sit on to shower, which I did use for a while. And they gave a portable commode, which is something you can go pee or poop in without having to go to the actual toilet if you can't walk that far. I never ended up using that because I didn't want to have to put my family through cleaning that or anything, so I just used the cane and used my dad's hand to walk to the washroom anytime I needed to go to the washroom. But basically, once I was actually in the hospital, I had either one or two more seizures. I was kind of confused by the discharge notes, which I still have to this day. And they gave some medication, probably intravenously, because I don't remember swallowing anything, but it says in the notes they gave me something to stop the seizures. And then the next time I remember waking up, I was actually in an MRI machine, but I was still like half out of it. So I just remember waking up and hearing the noises of the machine and all that, and then I don't know when the other one or two seizures happened, but the discharge note said I had 3 seizures in total. So it wasn't until the seizures actually stopped and I regained consciousness that I realized like I was actually in the hospital, and I was like fully aware of it. And I was starting to gather my surroundings and everything. And then they told me, because I guess they made it very urgent because of me having seizures, that it felt like the time went by so fast. But they told me, oh, we found 2 blood clots in the back of your brain, and one of them is very large. So right away they started me on an injectable blood thinner, and then basically I was on the blood thinner the whole time I was there. But because of everything that happened, I apparently had a stroke too. So seizures, blood clots were found in my brain, and I had a stroke. And what happened is the whole left side of my body was completely paralyzed. Luckily, my speech was okay when I went to talk, but my left arm, my left leg, pretty much everything on the left side was extremely weak. And when I tried to wiggle my toes, I could barely move them. Like, I don't even think I could move them at all right away. And I don't know how they were able to find out about the stroke even before I knew I had it. I didn't even know I had it until they told me, but I don't know how they were able to figure out that I'd had a stroke. But maybe they figured out from how my body was responding while I was unconscious. But um, while I was in the hospital, it was very frustrating because they had me hooked up to so many different things to always keep an eye on my heart. And I was basically stuck to a bed. And this was on the first, I was on an emergency floor, and then they eventually admitted me as a patient and put me on another floor. And I can't remember what floor that was. It might have been for trauma patients, so there's so many different types of trauma, but it might have been for trauma. And I remember when I asked after a few days, they had me in diapers for many days, and I told them I wanted to use the actual toilet. And this was the first time they were able to see me walk, so they helped get me up. But then once I got off the bed, I like fell to the ground and fell sideways to the left because I had no feeling in the left side of my body, and like everything was kind of acting weird. I couldn't get a balance on my left side. So it was just so much things. I had to see so much specialists while I was there. So basically, after that first toilet experience, they're like, sir, you have to be in diapers until you can actually walk again. So it was very frustrating going pee and poop in diapers, but this was just something that happens and can happen to you at any age. I was 29 at the time, I'm 30 now. So yeah, basically I was in diapers, and it was like embarrassing, but luckily the nurses were very professional and they deal with this thing all the time. But I don't know how often people at my age have strokes, so when they told me it was a stroke, it was quite a surprise. But they said the seizures were probably from the blood clots that were in my brain. So I was on a blood thinner every day there, and I was on all my other medications that I was regularly on aside from that, and they had me on an anti-seizure medication. Uh, but before I was discharged from the hospital, we found out the anti-seizure medication wouldn't be covered by my insurance, so they had to put in a thing for my discharge thing for the pharmacy to switch me over slowly to the one that was covered. But for a while, until my body weaned off the other one, I had to keep paying out of pocket for the one that wasn't covered because they can't just stop it suddenly, I guess. But yeah, that's basically, I had to switch to one that was covered once I was discharged from the hospital. And yeah, basically it was very frustrating. I had to see specialists who would check my speech every day. Every day they would ask me the date, the time, where I was, the city I lived in, my first and last name, my date of birth, just the same questions every day. And they would do that a few times a day usually, and then they would check my blood pressure at least 3 or 4 times a day. So it was like extremely depressing being there, but I knew I just couldn't do anything about it, so I had to just suck it up. And then eventually, after a day or two, my dad brought me my phone. So there wasn't a lot of power in it, but I think they ended up letting me use one of their chargers. And I got my phone from him shortly before they transferred me to the floor for people who have had strokes and stuff. It was some other floor. I can't remember the name of the department. But at least I had my phone to fiddle around on. while I was there. And then once I got brought up to the other floor, the final floor I was on was probably the best experience the whole time I was there because it was less noisy. Um, Everyone was there for the same reason, so it wasn't like trauma where it's like different reasons. And I was in a room. There was a woman in her 40s to the right of me, and then there was an old guy that got brought in. He was like 80 something, who was in the bed across from me. So I think they can fit up to 3 or 4 beds in one room, but there were, I think, 3 in our room set up. And eventually, with the physiotherapist there, they allowed me to use an actual walker. But first, for many days, I just kept going like this and doing whatever I could on my own without anyone even teaching me. But they did tell me that would like help if I started doing stretches and stuff. So like just wiggling my toes and moving around in my bed as much as possible. And the beds were just so uncomfortable. But the one that I was on, I can't remember if the first bed I was on the other floor had an electronic thing, but I was able to adjust it to make myself go up. There was like a little button, so I would prop myself up a lot. But a lot of the time I was there, I just told myself I'm just gonna try to sleep through a lot of this and just get a lot of sleep, and maybe the sleep will help my body recover faster. And yeah, basically, the first time I got to use the walker, I was really encouraged. And it was like just the first time it was like just standing and sitting with it. And then it was very gradual. And then eventually I got to actually try like walking a few steps with it. But then one time, once I got a lot of strength back, I tried walking to the washroom without the walker, and they got a little upset, and they said, make sure you only use the walker now. So basically, I'm trying to summarize it up fast so it's not too lengthy and boring for you guys, but there were so many nurses each day. Sometimes I'd get the same nurses once I was on the floor, the final floor I was on. Once they did have enough confidence in me by viewing what I was capable of, they told me I could on my own go up and down the wing of the floor and back to my room with the walker. But the first few times they were monitoring me and they were with me and they would have to hold me a bit. So it was, for some reason, the stroke affected the left half of my body. Um, and even once I was discharged from the hospital, it took like a few months to fully get full strength in the left half of my body so that it was equal on both sides. But definitely, like the first month, I was holding on to my dad's hand while we went out anywhere because I didn't like using the cane a lot. But I did use the cane a little bit, but I just ended up resorting to holding my dad's hand, and I was hoping no one would say anything because I'm like, they might not know we're related or anything, but I'm like, whatever. If people say something rude, I'm just gonna ignore it. But that's basically everything that happened. They found the blood clots in my brain, and that explained the seizures, and then that's why I was on anti-seizure medication. And the blood thinners, they said they were hoping eventually it would shrink it down to nothing, but that it would take like many months. Now, later last year in December, I got a follow-up MRI of my brain, and I hope I never have to go through that again because I was extremely claustrophobic in the machine, and it was just very scary for me being in there. It felt like at least half an hour. But yeah, they give you a thing you can squeeze on at any point if you want to talk to them through the glass. But you're not supposed to move. And actually, I was like 250 when I was in that machine, and they do ask you your weight on a piece of paper when you fill out your health history. So I don't know if there's a weight limit, but at 250 pounds, that machine was quite tight on me. So if I had been any bigger, I don't know how they would have done an MRI, but yeah, those machines are really tight. So there probably is like a weight limit. Luckily now I'm at a lower weight, but I won't be needing any more MRIs unless I start developing symptoms of something, the clots coming back in my brain. But as of last December, the blood clots are completely gone in my brain. So the blood thinners, I was on 5 milligrams of Eliquis twice a day, every day, and you have to take it twice a day so it stays in your system for a full 24 hours every day. That's why you don't take like just one dose of 5 or 10 milligrams once a day. You have to take it twice so it spreads out. So it's like always in your system. But just a few months ago, I can't remember when my last appointment was. No, actually, I think it was just in February, my last appointment with the blood clot doctor. He said now that the blood clots are gone, I can be on 2.5 milligrams twice a day, but the 2.5 milligrams of Eliquis isn't covered at my pharmacy, only the 5 milligrams. So he still prescribes it as 5 milligrams twice a day, but he told me to just cut it in half with my pill slicer. So I actually have extra all the time because of cutting them in half. But I'll just show you what it looks like. Well, this is half of one, but I think they say APO on them, and these are all cut in half. I have a pill slicer. But I don't want to show you my blister pack with what a full one looks like, because then you will see all my info and everything else I'm on. So the other thing is, now that since the seizures were apparently caused from the blood clots, I decided that I would not be taking the anti-seizure medication anymore. Obviously, I am talking to the doctor about it, but the anti-seizure medication I got put on that was covered was lamotrigine, and it started around March 2nd. I started getting extremely dry mouth. So it never caused that for me in the past, but all of a sudden I started developing extremely dry mouth, so I decided to wean off of it, and I will be following up with the doctor actually on Monday. So but yeah, ever since weaning off of it, the dry mouth is almost completely gone. And now I'm gonna take a sip of water. Just all this talking is making me a bit thirsty. But yeah, the dry mouth is almost completely gone from going off the anti-seizure medication, but the seizures were like 99% probably caused by the blood clots that were in my brain. So brain blood clots are very serious if they're not treated right away. So it's a good thing that they got me to the hospital quickly and quickly started a blood thinner and anti-seizure stuff to stop the seizures. But basically, I think that's almost everything I can mention, is that it was just like hard to walk for a while. But luckily my speech wasn't really affected, or nothing that I noticed. Unfortunately, the blood thinner, I will probably have to stay on it the rest of my life. I'm following up with the blood clot doctor in April to say how it's going being on the lowered dose. The reason why I'm on 2.5 milligrams instead of 5 now, twice a day, is because now I'm just on a preventative dose and I don't need to be on the higher dose. The 5 milligrams twice a day was to get rid of the blood clots in my brain, whereas the 2.5 milligrams twice a day is just to keep preventing them from coming back. So, which is good because there's more side effects you can get with the higher dose. But the good thing is, Eliquis has more of a success rate at preventing the blood clots from coming back, and it's covered for me. And the other thing he said I could take if it turned out not to be covered was aspirin, but that would be costing me money out of pocket each month because it's not covered. So I'm just really glad I can stay on Eliquis because it's more effective at preventing the blood clots from coming back, and it's 100% covered for me. All I have to do is keep cutting them in half every day, which isn't too big of a deal. So yeah, basically a year later I can walk normally now. Like, it's getting close to a year's mark now. The blood clot doctor, I do have to keep following him after this next appointment. He said he'll want to see me every 6 months to a year going forward, but before that he wanted to see me more frequently, like every 3 to 4 months. So yeah, if all goes well at the next appointment and I'm not having any symptoms of any headaches or blood clots coming back, like any signs, then I'll be seeing him every 6 months to a year, unless he changes his mind on the spot and wants to see me more frequently again. But that's what he told me last time, that I'll only have to see him every 6 months to a year after the next appointment, which is good. So basically, the seizures, I have no memory of having the seizures whatsoever, and the blood clot doctor was actually paged to the hospital I was at shortly after I had had the seizure. I can't remember if he saw one of the seizures or if he just got there after one of them finished, but he told me he was talking to me right after I had a seizure, and that I was like talking back, but I actually have no memory of it. So I must have been pretty out of it, because for some reason, and from someone who never had seizures before, um, I never knew that you don't remember it. But I've never actually watched videos about other people who've had seizures, so I don't know what other people's experiences are. But I had no memory of having the seizures. I just remember um, waking up and feeling really disoriented and really out of it and really like scared, so because I didn't know what had just happened, and if it wasn't for my dad witnessing the first seizure I had, I would have just woken up and thought like, wow, I feel weird, but not have known I had had a seizure. So it's good I live with family, because I never knew that was going to happen to me last year. So that's just a godsend. It just worked out that I happen to be living with them since 2021, and then boom, that happened. I also want to say the blood clots in my brain that they found 3 months earlier. It was around 3 months earlier I had had my second Moderna vaccine, COVID vaccine, but I never brought it up to the doctors at the hospital. I can't remember. I think they did ask if I was vaccinated, but once I was discharged, one of my brothers said he thinks there's a good chance the vaccines could have caused the blood clots in my brain, because there were other people in the world who had gotten the vaccine and had developed blood clots, and some of them died. So, like, obviously, I've never brought this up to the blood clot doctor at each appointment, and my brother said don't bother because he'll just, like, deny it. But I just want to mention that I had two of the Moderna vaccines spaced out, but the second one was a few months before they found the blood clots in my brain, and I'm pretty sure it was the Moderna brand that I got. And I have the proof in my wallet, the papers for getting them done. But there was pressure to get those vaccines done, and because of somewhere I was living at the time in 2021, it was a group home, and you were required to be vaccinated in order to be able to live there. So that was just temporary, but I did get the vaccines, and the vaccines also made us more privileged to be able to go to the movies and different things during COVID. And I had no idea there could be so many side effects, and this is coming from someone who never gets a flu shot. I stopped getting the flu shot when I was like, I think it was 18 or 19. I just said I'm not gonna get this anymore because I don't think it's necessary. So any vaccines or pandemics that come out down the road, I'm not going to be getting the vaccines. But especially things that haven't been tested for 10 years, you shouldn't be getting that in your body. So I just want to say there is a chance that it could have been from the COVID-19 Moderna vaccines I got. I'm like 99% sure they were both Moderna, the ones I got. But yeah, I'll never know for sure what caused them, but there is a chance that could have caused it. Also, being overweight can cause it. And another thing they told me that could have caused it is the birth control pills. And they took me off of birth control when I was admitted at the hospital, because they said birth control pills can cause blood clots. But what I found out after, when I spoke to the blood clot doctor, is he said most people that get blood clots from birth control pills, it's after the first few months of taking it, not after being on it 9 years like I was. I was on it 9 years. There were a couple times where I wasn't on it for a few months to see if I could lose weight. But for the most part, I was on different brands of the birth control pill for 9 straight years, pretty well. So almost 10 years. So he said, even though he thinks it's less likely it was from the birth control pills, he wants me to stay off that permanently. So once they took me off of it, I started getting my period in the hospital from not being on the pill. And then I just didn't get my periods all last year. And I was like, great, well, I'm not surprised. It's probably from going off the pill and also from my body going through what I did, because the doctor said a stroke can sometimes make your period stop. So um, finally this January, I got my period again naturally for the first time. February, got it again naturally again. March, got it again this month naturally again. And I actually keep a Word document, and I put the dates of my period for each month so I can keep track that I'm still getting it each month. And I'm not sexually active, and I'm not planning on being in a relationship. So for me, this is an okay method of being on no birth control pill. And I live with family, so I'm not worried about anyone breaking in and doing something to me. If you live on your own, you have to be more careful for those kind of things. As a woman, you could get preyed on more easily. But yeah, also there was a whole list of things I read online that can put you more at risk for developing blood clots. And like one of them even said, like, if there's a genetic link. And my aunt, one of my dad's sisters, had a blood clot in her leg in her younger years. But they did the genetic blood test for me, and they said nothing showed up that could be causing a genetic reason. But sometimes I don't always trust these doctors, because it's not like they're showing me the results. They're just reading it on their screen, and I feel like sometimes they like to keep some things to themselves. But I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit paranoid. But yeah, I have another appointment in April, so I think that should go good. And I am glad to be on the lower dose of the Eliquis now, so that there are less side effects, as I read online that there are more side effects when you're on the higher dose. So ideally, I'd rather not be on a blood thinner pill the rest of my life, because it's just another medication I'm putting into my body every day. But considering it could save my life at preventing blood clots from coming back into my brain, I'm willing to be on it. And I'm getting a little tired now. It's 9:45 p.m. So let me grab another sip of water here. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say for this video. It's like really hard opening up about so many personal things like that, especially on YouTube. But I'm doing it more so I can look back on it for myself at the 1 year mark. And also in case there's anyone else who has had blood clots, even if it's in other parts of their body, they can watch this and maybe relate to me. But yeah, I hope this helped people understand a little bit of what I went through. And the only thing I'm dealing with now is the shoulder thing that's still ongoing. I did get a physiotherapist when I left the hospital that saw me once, but that was towards the end of this program I was in, where nurses come to your home a few times a week to check your vitals and check on how you're doing. And I only told them about my shoulder towards the end of I think it was a 4-month free program covered here. For people who have had strokes and stuff, where it's like a literal personal support worker comes into the home. And I even at the very beginning got the help of them giving me my shower. Obviously I asked for a woman for those like appointments we set up, because I don't want a man washing me naked. So yeah, that we use the bench and the tub. But I only got help with that thing like a few times, because I decided after I wanted to try showering on my own and having as much control over the situation and independence as possible. And I figured just for walking around in the apartment, I could just use the cane or get my dad's help. But it was annoying having to get his hand to walk everywhere every time we went out. But I was like, hey, at least I'm still getting out, getting some fresh air and sunshine. So, yeah, the physiotherapist, I only told the personal support worker more towards the end, and then she's like, oh, well, that's covered in this program. They can see you up to a number of times. But it was so close to the end, and there was a bit of a wait, so I only saw her once. And then she said my shoulder, the muscle, like, was inflamed, but she said it didn't look like dislocated. Now, I've never actually gotten a scan of my shoulder since what happened because this may sound bad, but when I was in the hospital, I didn't bring up the shoulder pain to the nurses because I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. Now, I did take my time with recovering while I was there, but eventually I just wanted to like get out of the hospital, so I never brought up about the shoulder because I'm like, oh great, that's going to be another thing they'll want to keep me longer for. But maybe it would have been wise to mention it to get like a scan of it, but I can always get a scan of it down the road to see if there's any like actual permanent damage. But basically, they're very careful before they discharge you. They want to make sure you're like really set and you got all the supports you need in place to go home. And yeah, the physiotherapist gave me some stretches. One was to hang my arms down and swing it like a rag doll. The other one was to go like this and pull it. And even that just hurt right there. And the other one was where you go like this and you just put your elbows back as far as you can, and that sort of pulls on the shoulder. And then she told me to use my magic bag and an ice pack on it, alternating 3 times a day, which I did do that for a couple of weeks, and then after that I stopped. But it did help a little bit with the inflammation, I think, because after that it wasn't quite as inflamed. The last thing I'll mention, oh, and I'll just say I never saw the physiotherapist again because by the time it would have been time to see her again, the 4-month program that was covered for me had ended. So it's like I wasn't willing to pay for one out of pocket after that. But the other thing I'll mention is when I was in the hospital, they wanted to transfer me to this other center in my city that I had never even heard of. It was like a rehabilitation center for people who have had strokes and things like that, or I guess injuries. And but then when I found out that the parking there was like over $20 just for a visitor, I was like, that's ridiculous. So I'm like, how would my dad can see me each day like he was seeing me when I was here? Um, Although he did have to pay for parking to see me each day, but it was way cheaper than what he would have had to pay at the other place. And the other place was like downtown in my city, and I don't think my dad would have been able to find it because we're not good with directions downtown. It's really big down there and confusing. So if I had been transferred straight to that other place, first of all, I wouldn't have had any of my clothes from home, any of my stuff to keep me busy. My dad wouldn't have been able to find me to come visit me, and just the whole idea of it, and then being stuck in another place when I could just do the rehabilitation at home, I just decided not to. And I told I had it worded in a way that sounded like I would still be willing to consider it down the road, but I didn't want to do it now in order to be discharged from the hospital. So in the end, they did let me be discharged, but what I agreed with the social worker there was that I would accept the help of these people coming into the apartment a few times each week for the 4-month program. So she agreed that that would be okay in the end. She did want to push me to do the rehabilitation thing so I could walk better and learn the specific stretches and strengths to get all my strength back. But I just did that on my own just by basic just walking every day and getting out of bed and stuff like that. So that's the only thing else I'd like to mention. We're already at 34 minutes and 14 seconds. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I've lost weight since my highest weight last year. So that makes it easier to walk. But the hardest thing dealing with is just my shoulder because when I lie on my right side at night, after a year of passing, like it's not as painful, but there is still pain in my right shoulder when I sleep on my right side. But I can't lie on one side of my body all night on my left side, so I do have to rotate eventually. And I do naturally in my sleep. Also, I notice when I go to carry groceries and things, if I pull something too quickly or if it's really heavy, it'll cause a sharp pain in my right shoulder where it was pulled by the paramedics last year. So obviously I didn't see what happened because I was like mostly unconscious, and all I could remember was them saying things to me. I don't actually remember being pulled by my arms, but my brothers and dad witnessed the whole thing. So when I told them after why my shoulder was hurting so much, they said, "Oh, it's because they were pulling you by your arms, like dragging you by your arms." So obviously, they weren't like physically strong enough to lift me any other way, and maybe they thought that was the best way at the time, but just getting dry throat from talking so much. Yeah, but my because of my shoulder being pulled and still injured all this time later, a year later almost, I'm not able to do weightlifting. I used to lift like 5 or I can't remember if 10 pounds was the highest I lift, but I would do stretches like this every day, and then I would like bring it up like this every day, and I would do repeats. And I can't remember how many reps I ended up getting to, but I was doing that like regularly, sometimes almost daily, right up until I had the stroke. So um, after the shoulder thing happened and I realized how much pain my shoulder was in the hospital, and just once I was discharged, and then when I found out what my brothers told me, I realized I might not be able to do the same types of things I was able to do before with my arms, even things like including yoga. So basically, because no one else can feel what I feel, I know like what I'm capable of, and it's hard to lift things with my right arm. Obviously, I can lift a coffee mug and light things, but um, with groceries, I often just end up being the door holder for my brothers and dad, and they lift everything. That's just the way we've done it because of my shoulder. So, yeah, my exercise now, I stick to simply just walking, which is still a great exercise. It's just a bit disappointing because I used to do a bit of the weightlifting with the weights every day. So I know some people might say, well, just do it with the one arm, but like I don't want to just get one arm stronger and leave the other arm. Like if I'm gonna do the weights, I want to be able to do it with both arms. Also, one thing that used to be hard for me was putting both hands on my hips. It's still awkward on this side, like it hurts once I get to about this point. So I can just show you that if you're curious. But yeah, I'm just kind of just cramped here at the side of the bed, but this is my left arm. I'm not sure how it'll show up once I upload this, because this camera is a little weird where sometimes it like flips everything the opposite way. I'm not sure if you guys have that on your cameras once you actually upload something. But anyways, if this looks like my right arm, it isn't. This is my left arm on my hip. Now when I go to do my right arm, it's really stiff. So if I go back like this, it looks a bit more normal, but lifting them both at the same time, it's like this side is definitely more stiff. If I do one arm, I can make it look slightly more natural, but it's just very stiff. But this is actually the best I've been able to get it in a year, and this improvement has just been within the last like month, I'd say. So definitely like it hurts like just after bringing my arm back down, like I can feel the pain after in my right shoulder, but and I can show those stretches that they showed me last year when I did have that physiotherapist the one time. So the first one was like this, and you just like a rag doll swing your arm, and I can definitely feel it pulling there. Ooh, getting a bit lightheaded. And then the other one was, yeah, going like this. I just had to be careful. And she said just to repeat them every day. And then the other one was going back like this. And I'll show you guys what my magic bag looks like if you ever need one for injuries. This is my magic bag, and you could probably find one online on Amazon, I'm sure, but you just heat it in the microwave for like 3 minutes. I like doing it 3 minutes because then it makes it extremely hot. But when I was using this on my shoulder, I liked it like really hot, but 3 minutes actually makes it a little too hot, so I kind of have to move the beans around in the bag so it wasn't too much on my shoulder. And then I can't remember how long I was supposed to do the ice pack, but she said to just apply the ice pack with a cloth in between and like lay on it for, I think it was 15 minutes. But what I ended up doing, instead of using a cloth, I just put the ice pack straight on the muscle part of the shoulder where it hurts and just laid on it. So I would alternate between these 3 times a day. But yeah, that's basically everything. Like, if you see me standing now, I don't think I'm lopsided when I stand now the way I was a year ago on my left side, where there was an obvious, like every time the nurses with the program came, they would see that I was still like weaker on my left side. It was very noticeable, but now a year later, like this is how I'm standing, and I don't notice anything on my left side anymore. But I don't really think about it too much either, so maybe I'd have to take a video of myself walking and see if I can notice anything. But yeah, that is basically everything. And oh yeah, so it's this game. It's called Fruit Ninja. Just waiting for it to load. And I've never played it all this time I've had it, but she's like, I recommend you to download Fruit Ninja, one of the nurses. But she said you just slice the fruit. Oh, drag the strawberry to continue. But yeah, it's just loading. So apparently you just slice fruit in this game, so I've never tried it all this time, but I was kind of like, I felt a little pressure too, because it was like a nurse telling me to do this, but she also gave me this like Play-Doh that I later ended up throwing away, but it was some natural Play-Doh she made herself that she put in this little like portable container for me to take home, and she said if I use that with my hands, it'll also help with my coordination, getting that back and everything. So yeah, 49 minutes and 3 seconds. Sorry this video was so long for you guys, but I just wanted to go in depth as possible to just explain everything. But the scariest part for me when I was in the hospital wasn't even the fact that I had seizures. It was the fact that I couldn't feel the left side of my body the first few days. And when I tried to move my toes, like nothing, barely anything would happen. And I just had to keep doing that a lot every day, keep moving the left side of my body, my feet, and my hands as much as possible to start to get the strength back and try to speed up the process. But that was the scariest part for me, was not knowing how long it was going to take. But yeah, once I was discharged, they brought up a wheelchair, my dad did, and he rolled me out that way, and I had my stuff on my lap. And then I waited outside while he went to go find the car and get me, and then he sort of helped me into the car. So that's sort of how he got me home. And the walker that the program gave me that I ended up returning wasn't one with wheels to use around the apartment here. It was just one you have to lift and like move like that. So because there was no wheels on the bottom, I didn't end up using it, and I didn't end up using the wheelchair because there just wasn't enough space in here to use it. So yeah, that's everything I have to say about this video. Hope this was informative, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and feel free to comment, like, share, and subscribe, and yeah, see you guys.